So with the most recent patch of Space Marine 2, we got a lot of changes to the relative difficulty of the game. Some of those things that were added are the fact that contested health is now replenished with med packs, Zangors with shields are far easier, and it has to do also with the AI director. The AI director will spawn less Zangors with shields, we're going to deal with chaos as a whole far easier. And this kind of begs the question, is Space Marine 2 too easy now on Ruthless, the hardest difficulty? And in this video today, I want to discuss that topic and explore kind of my overall thoughts. It's going to be an op-ed piece, so there's no real visuals to look at. It's just a bunch of gameplay, so you can just kind of listen if you want. But in my typical fashion of upfronting the knowledge in my videos, my opinion of the current state of the game and its difficulty is that if you are going through the game with a concerted effort, with a team that is always playing together, everyone knows, everyone's using comms, they're doing call outs, they're doing everything, and you guys are like a well-oiled machine, Ruthless in its current state will now be a far easier experience for you. Is it too easy? I don't think so. I think that it is now a more accessible difficulty that everyone can accomplish with casual all the way up to hardcore. For the hardcore gamers, yeah, I think it's going to be too easy for them and they will get a little bored with it. But I think the most important thing you have to realize with this new patch and with this reduction in Ruthless's difficulty is that A, it unlocks relic tier weapons for people to be able to use that are not that absolute top tier of gamer. And B, we have an additional difficulty and more operations coming in season 2, which starts in October. So I think that the framing of this patch happening now rather than with season 2 is a little funky because we can't really see how Lethal's difficulty is going to affect Ruthless and how it's going to create more of a scale rather than a drastic jump. But I also think at the same time, it's okay for the hardest difficulty of a game to be very unapproachable and be harder to crack into. And I think that too, I am not an amazing player of Space Marine 2, and I'll say this later in the video. I think I'm definitely above average. I play with people that are better than me, that help me excel and become a better player. And I think that that's overall good for the game's health, to have a difficulty that forces you to get better at the game. At the same time too, I think it's also good to have the current max difficulty with the current weapon situation be more accessible, because when lethal comes out, you will not be able to do lethal if you are not using relic weapons. Just like Ruthless, prior to 3.0's patch, you could not do it without relic weapons reliably. And that kind of has to do with the way that the strength stat works, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. But that's really my down and dirty impression of the patch. And I think that outside of difficulty, outside of is it too easy, is it easier, is it a walk in the park, is it a walking simulator, all that stuff, the most important thing is it's more fun. Even playing with a dedicated team and doing things on Ruthless and getting like a 90% clear rate and not even using meltas, we would never touch the chaos missions because of Zangors with shields, because of how punishing the amount that they would have on the table would be, not table, but screen. All these aspects that were, I think, fixed with the 3.0 patch to now make it so that, yeah, maybe Ruthless isn't the hardest thing in the world anymore, but I can actually play 3 or 50% of the operations missions and have a good time. So regardless of whether or not the difficulty is too easy or easier or accessible or whatever it is, I think by and large, Ruthless is more enjoyable. And that's the most important thing, is not necessarily trying to be a sweaty, try-hard gamer, but actually enjoying every bit of it. And I think when Lethal comes out and it does generate that level of difficulty that does make you really kind of lock in and try hard and get sweaty about it, it'll be more of like a cool, I accomplished the hardest difficulty. There can be a lot that can be said about Lethal. We'll save that for the end of the video. But that's the too long didn't watch this entire video. If that's all you wanted to know, please feel free to go ahead and shut the video down. But before you head out, if the video ends up helping you or you enjoyed it, it was informative, whatever it is, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And also check out my Twitch linked in the description and the pinned comment, where I am streaming operations and multiplayer of Space Marine 2. But let's get started here on, is Space Marine 2 too easy? So getting into the actual like nuts and bolts, the meats and potatoes, whatever the hell the statement is of this video, let's talk about the difficulty of Ruthless prior to patch 3.0. And that difficulty was really hinged upon getting relic weapons, because relic weapons, they have the highest power, and power has a hidden stat, quote unquote, that really affects the stagger of things. The higher that power, the more likely you are to stagger things. So it allows you to have breathing room in Ruthless. It allows you to knock things out that are calling for reinforcements. There's a lot of good benefit to having those best weapons. In addition to that too, the game even tells you, like, hey, don't do this below a certain level range or you will get punished. And it's pretty true to form. Ruthless, prior to the patch, especially if we're talking about any chaos mission, was really grueling. I didn't even get Ruthless victory on the chaos mission with the go-kart, with the battery, until the patch, because Zangor shields were impossible. That's a big portion that the patch fixed up, right? Zangor shields are no longer these bastions that can hold against a full charge las fusel anything, and that was a big problem. You could have a Minoris creature running at you, and yeah, you can disarm the shield by jumping into melee, but if you're a heavy or a sniper or even a tactical and you're trying to shoot it down, they would take every single shot. And the same thing could be said too for Tyranid warriors just simply crossing their swords, which doesn't make a whole ton of sense, while it can take a whole entire las shot to the face, but whatever, that's neither here nor there. My point remains here that prior to this, you would have to deal with so many Zangors with shields that it would become overwhelming very quickly. And I think ultimately, if I were to take the patch notes and only look at the Zangor patch notes, it would have made the difficulty a really positive step rather than being very quote unquote watered down and weak and so on and so forth. So I think prior to the patch, it was just not fun to do anything chaos related, even though it was very cool and interesting from like a lore or like a visual standpoint. When it actually came to the gameplay, it would be a real big pain in the ass because you had to deal with so much. And especially too, the Warp Flame Rubik Marines would really dumpster you because they'd be teleporting all over the place and on top of you. You couldn't pinpoint them. And that's another thing that the patch has done. It's reduced the total amount of spawn on all of the chaos creatures, Majoris and Minoris. And I think that might have been too drastic of a sweep. I think reducing the Zangor would have been good, but the sweep went from Zangors going from a max of 10, Zangors with shield specifically, a max of 10 on the battlefield to now 4. And the snipers, the cultist snipers, went from a max of 10 to now 3. A 60 and a 70% reduction on both is a pretty harsh reduction. And we're strictly talking about the nerfs to the enemies, because there's been buffs that the players have gotten to their player agency or their player power that have been pretty significant as well. If you take a look at your med packs prior were going to give you a point of restoration of health that was equivalent to the difficulty. If you're playing on difficulty 1, you get more health than when you're playing on Ruthless, which is difficulty 4. That's still the same, but now med packs will restore contested health. So it doesn't matter how much health that they restore. They could restore 5% or 50%. If you have contested health, it restores the entire bar, whatever's contested, really. So if you're a bulwark, and some of you that have seen my Power Fist guide, you'll see me doing this. I had, let's just say it's 5% health for sake of argument. I dropped the banner, I got a full bar of contested health, I used a med pack and it went to full. Prior to this, I would have to time this with an execute or use it with my friends. So what I'm really able to do now with the bulwark is maybe one friend's at 5% and I'm at 5%. We queue up an execute, I drop the banner, they go ahead and kill the creature to get their health back, and I use a med pack, and we both just went to 100% health. And they removed drop pods giving you health for both the heavy and the bulwark, but that was a bug. So I'm okay with that. But I just feel like the med pack giving you contested health, the spawn rate on all the chaos things being weaker, all attributing to a very easy Ruthless. Now, there are some things that are positive to the overall difficulty being reduced, but also I think it's healthy for the game. When I look at the way Minoris interact with your armor, prior to the patch, Minoris would hit you and they would take out a whole blip of armor. Now they take a relative amount of armor off based off of the damage that they've done. Is it one of their blue attacks that launched into you? Is it just a ranged attack? Is it a ranged attack when you're in melee? Is it a melee attack? Whatever the situation is, it now will do relative armor damage, which is really good. And perfect parrying a Minoris always killed them but now it returns armor for you. So that was, I think, a pretty necessary thing to add to the game. So 3.0's patch has a lot of these little things that are, I think, individually very good steps for the game. But I think that all of them coming together is the problem with Ruthless difficulty, in that it took a lot of the teeth away from the AI spawn director, and it added so much player power or ways to kind of counterbalance the health issue that was prevalent in Ruthless, that I just don't feel that crushing level of difficulty. Now, the crushing portion of the difficulty came with the amount of spawn and the call-ins. Call-ins being anytime something calls for reinforcements, right? Those things are still there. And if you are negligent towards them and you don't defeat the call-ins, you can still get overwhelmed quite easily in Ruthless and lose. But I think any team that is playing with a cohesive manner, calling out call-outs, shutting them down, trying to put that kind of good pacing in, you find yourself pushing through the map very well. Prior to this, I would not have thought of soloing a Ruthless. Now on stream, after patch 3.0 came out, I've attempted to solo Ruthless, and I didn't win because of a skill issue, not because I was like, man, there's no way I'm going to beat this. I was like, shit, I didn't dodge here. I made a bad call there with my parry and I didn't win. So it is kind of a fun, sweaty experience to do, because now we can do private lobbies. So having that as a personal difficulty thing is very fun. But I think that being able to solo the hardest difficulty in any game is not necessarily a good thing. I think that you should always need to have a team to really accomplish the hardest difficulty. It should feel like an achievement to put in those paces, put in that work. I think too, like I've said, it is good for the overall health of the game to have the hardest difficulty in this situation accessible, because we're getting a harder difficulty. But I think that what I really wanted from yesterday's patch, well, whenever you're watching this, 3.0's patch, was to have these buffs, because I've looked at a lot of your feedback, guys, from what you've said on that video, and a lot of you are very excited for those things. And the people that have said that, hey, you know what, those aren't good buffs to the players, those are too many nerfs to the enemies. I think the people that are saying that, myself included, are people who are playing with friends that are maxed out, that are all playing together. My friend group and I that are playing together, we have 100+ hours in the game each. So we're all very well versed in it. And I think that this opens the door to accessibility to lethal. But what I would have liked to have seen in that patch notes, which I think would have alleviated the fears of anyone else who's in my similar boat, to see the devs say, hey, we have made it more accessible for Ruthless because we want to have a good gradual scale. We don't want to have it go, okay, 1 and then 2 is a little harder, 3 is a little harder, and then 4 is crushing you. I think they wanted it to have a gradual progression of difficulty, maybe from like, oh, it's a 1 out of 10 to a 4 out of 10 to a 6 out of 10 to an 8 out of 10 to a 10 out of 10 of difficulty, whatever it is. And I think that having that communication back from the devs would have been a great way to digest this. I think it would have been easier for people that are more maxed out with their character levels, a lot of their weapons towards Relic. They could look at it and go, okay, cool. Then I'll take this time to max out everything else so that when lethal comes, I'll feel like I'm really starting to push things in the right direction. This is really challenging. And I think too, we'll close the video out with my expectations or what I want from lethal. But I think what is really going to be needed earlier than is planned on the roadmap are prestige. And we don't know what prestige is in this game, right? We know from Call of Duty, or if you play Hunt Showdown, prestige is resetting everything so that you can go through it again with some sort of gain at the end of that. But a lot of people have said, hey, we need prestige classes now prestige added into the game now because I'm already maxed out on 4 of the 6 characters, right? Is it 6? Is it 8? It's 6, right? Yeah. Whatever. I don't know how many videos I made in this damn thing. Whatever. It's cool. Let's just keep rolling through this. So I've already maxed out majority of the characters, or I've maxed out almost all my weapons. And even further too, like, okay, does prestige just reset my character class, or does it reset my character class and my weapon progression? Because the weapon progression is going to be rough to reset, because I'm not going to necessarily want to go back down to the lowest difficulty, because my understanding of the game is that much better. What makes the lowest difficulties hard when you start off is that you don't know the timing, you don't know how the game operates, all these things. Unless Prestige creates some sort of different relationship between the character and the AI director, I don't know how worthwhile it's going to be unless there's some sort of cosmetic unlock or what have you. Because I think that's a big thing I want to see with the lethal difficulty. So let's jump into that conversation now. So with lethal difficulty, let's talk about this roadmap, because I think it's going to put into perspective for you how this patch I think will lead into this major content patch. And a lot of people have said, well, hey, where's the bolter upgrades that they talked about in the Q&A? Where are the lens color changes that they've talked about in the Q&A coming for cosmetics? They were saying that those things will happen in the next major content patch, which comes out in Season 2. Season 2 is in October. So patch 3.0 made Ruthless more accessible, I'll just say. I don't want to say easier, because it feels shittier for the people that haven't caught up to that skill level yet. So it's more accessible to that skill level. And in doing so, I think it's paved the way for lethal difficulty. And it's why I think, like I've said so many times in this video, it's so important. And lethal difficulty also gives us multiple new PvE missions, a new enemy. Again, we don't know if this is Minoris Majoris, Terminus, or Extremis, or a whole new boss, right? Like, we don't know if that's a boss at the end of a level, like with Decapitation or the Helldrake. So a lot of this new content is coming. And I think for the people that are, I'm actually going to do this, the people that are kind of looking at this right now and going, man, well, now the game's too easy. What's the point? I think hopefully this will give you more replayability in new missions and lethal difficulty. So lethal difficulty for me, I don't want to see more bullet sponge, you know? And they've even said, hey, you know, we want to not have the higher difficulties be bullet spongy. And there's one thing I've kind of noticed when I was playing on Ruthless difficulty yesterday, was that anytime I played against Chaos, it felt way easier to kill them. It might have been because I was on Assault and my ground pound just got way more damage added into it. But it felt like I was popping them into execute way easier. So if they're trying to bring their damage up or their health down to increase it in lethal, okay, sure. But what I want out of lethal difficulty is an AI director that is ruthless. Well, that is lethal. God, what a shitty pun. I want an AI director that doesn't let up. Right now, if you go to play Ruthless and you take your time, the AI director goes, oh, you want to sit on your ass? Well, here's another wave. Here's another wave. You have to keep somewhat of a pace, even in Ruthless difficulty. I want lethal difficulty to feel sweaty. I want, when I jump into that difficulty, to go, oh man, just leave it. I'm not going to go replenish my ammo. There are definite points in Ruthless where prior to or post patch, I've been able to go, okay, we've cleared that wave. Let's get some ammo before moving on. No, I want to feel like I either am going to get that ammo or I'm going to die. Or I'm going to get that ammo or I'm going to get out of there. One of those is going to happen and it could possibly kill me. It could be a run ender. And I want lethal difficulty to also really ramp up those extremist spawns. Like, throw multiple lictors at me so that I'm just freaking out. Throw two Terminus at me, like hit me with a double neurothrope and I'm gonna have a seizure. Like, I really want there to be a lot of pressure in lethal difficulty to make it feel like all these maps that I've already played tons of times feel even scarier. And I won't lie to you. I mean, yeah, I play the game, and yes, YouTube is my job, but I've played Inferno maybe just shy of or over 100 times. I have no idea how many times I played it, and I still love that mission. I still really enjoy going about it. If you go and do Lux Eterna, wait, no, that's a Metallica song. The other one, Vox Liberatus, it still feels fun and original for me. I enjoy it because of the elements of every map that have RNG on it, so that it feels sometimes like it's a breeze and sometimes like it's a slog. And that, to me, keeps it fun and original. And lethal difficulty, I want it to really amp that up. I want it to really punish me. Or maybe even lethal difficulty takes a look at certain missions. Like, let's take Inferno, for example. The generator portion of the mission, you might have 0 generator malfunctions or attacks. You might have 1. You might have 3. why don't we make it like 6 and really have it to, or it's 2 at the same time or whatever it is. Like lethal difficulty, I want it to really split my attention and my team's attention, that we have to cordon off into different locations to really get things done, rather than, okay, let's just kind of focus here. We'll get this done, move on, get this here and get done. Whatever it is, I want it to actually feel more like the game's throwing so much stuff at me and less like, all right, I really just got to use 2 full magazines on a Minoris before I kill it. Like, I don't want it to be like that. And I think that if you've played any game like this, if you've played Destiny, if you've played Helldivers, if you've even played Borderlands, you know that that can be the kind of pitfall of any type of RPG-centric third-person, first-person shooter with any kind of like looter attached to it. You look at like Destiny as a looter, right? The difficulties end up becoming sponges until they balance out and go, oh, you know what, we had it too spongy, let's make it more mechanically driven. And I think lethal difficulty needs to be mechanically driven to keep player interest and to keep replayability in between the moments in which we get new missions or whatever it is. Because if we're looking at season 2 here, PvP missions are coming, and when I see an S at the end of something, that's 2 or more, right? So we're going to go from 6 to bare minimum 8 operations. That's great for me. And a new enemy, again, whatever that means. But looking at season 3, we get another PvP mission, so a singular one, and a new enemy and PvE prestige ranks, which I talked about. I think that needs to happen sooner rather than later because of how much people are consuming PvE content. And I think this is kind of a typical thing when we talk about developers and developers' expectations on roadmaps and stuff like that. I don't think that they factor in, when a game is good or people like it, how fast people will consume that content or how hard they will drill down into it. So I think that the PvE ranks needs to be hopefully something we see at the end of season 2 rather than full on in season 3. And we know season 2 is going to last us until the end of the year. Season 3 will be Q1 of next year, and season 4 will be Q2 of next year. So this is, if you're wondering what the timeline on this is, they've spoken about it tons and tons of times. So we know that this is all kind of coming well within a full year of where we're at right now. So that's my thoughts on lethal difficulty. That's my thoughts on the state of the game. I've rambled a lot here. This is, again, just an op-ed piece of me just kind of talking out of my ass. Let me know in the comment section below. Have you been playing Ruthless now and you finally can play Ruthless? I know some people are having connectivity issues. That's something that I can't speak to because I personally have had very rare instances of it, and I've not been able to pinpoint it down to platform or connection or game version, whatever it is. So unfortunately, I don't have any really cool tips for you. If you are having connectivity issues, the only thing I can recommend is for everyone involved if the connectivity issues to reboot their game. That's something that's helped out my friends and I. Sometimes we get one of us just can't join in. They get an infinite loading screen. When we all reset our game, that seems to be the thing that clears it. And that seems to be caused whenever someone is forcibly removed from the game or someone crashes. It seems to bug out all 3 players in their lobbies or whatever it is. So if you're experiencing that, reboot your game, give it a shot. Let me know if that fixes it for you in the comment section below. But also let me know what your thoughts are. Are you now finally able to clear Ruthless? Is Ruthless too easy for you? Are you not even going to play Lethal because you're just going to move on? Let it be known in the comment section below. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. Have a good one and take care.